At the start of 2016, Fnatic weren't just good, they were irritatingly good. In the final major of 2015, back when there were 3 a year, oh, the good old days, they'd gone out in quarterfinals, which just wasn't good enough for the team that had won the previous 2 majors back to back. So they cut their low fragging IGL and they brought in Dennis, a pistol god and headshot machina. Using what they remembered of Pronac's strat book, elite chemistry and I think 5 of the top fraggers in the world at that moment, they were able to just consistently win events, winning the last 3 events of 2015 in a row. They were able to outlast every other elite team of the period and do so consistently. 2016 continued in much the same fashion as the streak of elite event wins extended to 5. After that though, shit hit the fan. Olaf got injured, stand-ins were brought in, nothing really worked, and they ended up splitting into Fnatic and Godsent. It was a whole messy period. They, of course, went out in the quarters of majors, and they really struggled to make it to the top 4 of any significant event. This sort of utter annihilation of your squad in terms of just collapsing in on itself does take a while to recover from. During that recovery period, Fnatic's fading stars did have some glimmers of hope, some moments of brilliance still left in them. Most notably, Golden was able to get the team to win several elite events over the 1.5 to 2 year period he was actually the IGL, if at times usurped and replaced temporarily. But these sides weren't really overwhelmingly powerful. They weren't dominant in any real sense. They were able to grind out victories at certain events, select moments where they were able to get those victories across the line, but they never swept through their opponents and they never really had another era of dominance. Prior to their most recent conversion to colonial ways, they experimented with Jacquinho and some other young players, but that time period didn't really amount to a whole lot. It was then they took the drastic steps of deciding that they need the British to save them. Mezii, Alex, Smooya, Brollan, Krimz, the best Fnatic roster since 2016. And I'm going to break it down. I'm going to use different roster philosophies, different ways of modeling the game, different ways of looking at squad composition to show you how. I'm going to talk about the individuals, and by the end of the video, I'm sure you'll agree, this team is going to be dangerous in 2022. Let's start with roster composition. So, this first philosophy, this first model, I've named it Dwarven Astrology. Now, I picked it up from Thorin many years ago when I was first getting into the more content side of Counter-Strike. You know, aside from watching the occasional pro game, I was actually getting into like the YouTube content, the analysis, and one of the things Thorin always talks about was his balance of star players and how he expects a team to be built. So here's the basic concept. You have 2 stars, 1/3 hybrid star who kind of plays some supportive roles, but also does have the burden of fragging on them. So, you know, someone who exists in that in-between space, and then 2 support players who are just expected to make good decisions, make the right plays, do the right things, and allow the other players to really shine. There are other aspects to this that are really crucial to factor in. As Thorin has made it clear in a number of times, his models assume that an AWPer will mean no less than the 3rd star, so that hybrid player at worst. He really expects the AWPer to be a star, and yet the logic of a AWP support really doesn't track. It's really not something you should aim for in your sides, so that's why the AWPer, at worst, is the 3rd star. But yeah, aside from that kind of wrinkle, I guess, it's pretty simple. So does this Fnatic side fit? Yes, and quite perfectly. Now, Smooya and Brollan are going to be your 2 main stars, the players with the heaviest burden to frag, to really make plays, go off, and take the team across the line to earn those Ws. The hybrid 3rd star is actually going to be Mezii, who's going to be a bigger part of this team's fragging than he was in C9, but you saw it there, you've seen it in the time before and after. This guy can frag out with the best of them. He's just such a team player and such a cool, calm and collected individual that it does make sense to sometimes just slot him in as that support player. So here, he's in the 3rd star position, he has the playmaking, but he also has the supportive elements to really make that work. I think this is an ideal spot for him. Finally, 2 supports are Krimz and Alex. Now, with Krimz returning to form in this new roster, the team looks really deadly, especially when you look at fragging depth. Now, most teams' supportive pieces are their weakest fraggers. Their IGL also often really can't support the team when it comes to just hitting heads, you know, doing that side of the game. This side has a great exception to that. Alex, man, this guy can frag. If you look back across Alex's career history, he has consistently put up solid fragging numbers. Never maybe superstar levels. That's not what you're expecting. You're expecting decent, and he is that and then some. Alex being your 5th best fragger, that's a plus. That's a massive plus. So after this, this next model, this next idea, I don't really have a name for it. I'm not really sure who can be considered the inventor of it, but it's something that most people at least consider when talking about a roster balance, and that's the aggression balance. So once you have your star players sorted, you've got to know who's going to be doing what, the different playstyles required to win a game. A team realistically needs 2 players who are willing and able to make aggressive plays consistently, and then 2 players who are better at staying alive, slowly playing the round out, making good decisions, and coming alive in that late round. Alex and Brollan are your 2 clear aggressors. I think Brollan, he's been an entry almost his entire career in Fnatic, like a very hard entry at times. And then Alex, on the other hand, it's not necessarily always aggression, it's really playmaking. He really loves going for plays, making things happen, taking that forward step. And that's what allows him to be, one of the more aggressive elements on this side. On the other extremity are Krimz and Mezii. Now, we have seen Krimz at times play with a little more, pep in his step, a little more acceleration, a little more gas. But realistically, when his teams are at their best, isn't necessarily where he's the one doing the hard carrying. It's him playing this rock-like figure, just steady, calm, collected, and just plays really well with his teammates, setting them up and making the most of the positions he finds himself in. That's Krimz, and that's the sort of role I expect him to play here. Mezii, on the other hand, well, I called him the designated closer not too long ago when he was on Cloud9, and that's with good reason. He's one of those star players you want alive in the post plant. You want alive late in rounds, making those good decisions and isolating those fights. He's just having that IQ for the game that not everyone has. And that's what Mezii's really known for. It's the IQ, the decision making, and that's what makes him a more passive element in this side. Finally, Smooya, who in my eyes has kind of the freedom to float in the middle ground. Yes, he will go for opening duels. He'll go for repeats. He'll try to make those multi-kills happen. But this playstyle, whilst it did make him the beast that he is today, isn't necessarily as needed on this side. Sure, going for these plays, going for these peaks, going for these re-peaks, it's what allowed him to make movie star riders look, well, initially competent. Yes, they have moved away from him now and they still look pretty decent, but they don't have that same fragging power against the elite teams, and that was what Smooya brought. In this side, however, there is enough fragging that he doesn't need to take those risks. He can play more reserved, more within himself, and more within the system. And of course, when the opportunity presents itself, go for the repeat, hit the flick, make the play happen. But in this side, it's not essential. He doesn't need to do it for the team to win every round. Now for my evaluation, player by player. So it's nice to have Alex on a successful project again. I've been vocal about my doubts after the C9 debacle, and I needed to see something like this to really buy back in to the Alex hype train, I guess. This roster seems to suit his style of calling better. Now, not everything I'm about to discuss here I can really have much knowledge of, based off some of the things I've seen, some of the things I've heard. This is my understanding, but essentially Alex isn't an adept micromanager, but rather he makes great use of players who are able to think for themselves and play well within the system he lays out. This means he favours an AWPer who takes some initiative in deciding which picks he's going to take. An AWPer who takes control of his own rotations and really knows where to put himself. Riflers who do the same thing, they know how to make those little micro adjustments within the bomb sites, within the plan that's been laid out to make the most of them and to make plays. So, not a micromanager, but he needs those intelligent players around him who know how to make use of themselves, and that's I think what he's got in this team. Brollan is still, in my mind, the best rifler in Sweden, even if Fnatic's rut has lowered, I think, people's evaluation of him. At least on current form, I guess it's fair to say that he might not be, but I think pound for pound, he is by far the best rifler in Sweden. Now that he's back with a side that are playing the right way and committed to the project, Brollan is starting to re-emerge to the monster he was pre-2021. Prior to the roster moves, Krimz was having his worst year since the chaos of 2016 and 2017. He looks far more comfortable now, the addition of a tier 1 AWPer helping to shift the fragging weight off of his shoulders and allowing him to, go back to being that rock, that support, who really allows the team to thrive around him. Mezii is a beast, let's be honest, there's not much else to it. He frags with the best of them, hitting headshots and making plays like a star, and he fits that third hybrid support star kind of role perfectly because of his willingness to play for the team, his willingness to support other players. And yeah, he's always been that kind of player, and this really is the perfect situation to find him in. Add to all of that how clutch Mezii is, and yeah, there's no surprise that Alex would want him on basically any roster he decides to put together. Finally, Smooya. I have been extremely critical of Smooya in the past for his off-server antics, but have rarely had any qualms with his on-the-server qualities. Sure, he might not be as simple or as ZywOo, but Smooya will very quickly enter the best of the rest debate once this sign returns to LAN and once they return to competing against the world's best. As long as he remains an average teammate, Smooya will be one of Fnatic's most valuable assets for the foreseeable future. Yes, I rate this team very highly. They have explosive young players, veteran presences, and an entire squad of LAN-proven guys. Their weakest links are made of titanium, which is a luxury very few teams in the top 20 can brag as their own. If Fnatic can put on even a half-decent showing at IEM Winter, which I believe will be their first real test as a squad, they were clearly a step above that DreamHack Open level. Really made quick work of that group. So 2022 at that point would be looking brilliant for the British org. I've already claimed that 3 of these players will end in the HLTV top 20 players of 2022. And in order for that vision to come to pass, they will need to be one of the best 2 or 3 sides of the year. But that's exactly what I envision for this roster. And no, they don't have to win IEM Winter for that to be a realistic ambition or a realistic prediction. That event will be their first as a proper team, on LAN as well. It'll be more of an area for them to really discover and understand where they're at right now, and exactly how much work is remaining for them to reach that level. But if they can put out this level of Counter-Strike, this sort of output for the next 12 to 13 months, then they can definitely challenge the elites of the world, and maybe even upset and ruin certain eras that people thought they were building, because this Fnatic roster is here to play. Thank you for watching. Like if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on this Fnatic lineup. Shout out to my elite contenders, Lago15 and Excel. Thank you so much for your support. Link to my Patreon's in the description, so if you want to support me, please go check that out. Subscribe if you want to see more content, and that's all for this one. Goodbye.